Colonel Joe Skorocka joins us now to talk about this. Colonel, thanks for your time. So it appears a strike did happen. We know that much on that date, but there are so many questions that remain. I mean, were houses hit? Was a truck bomb hit? Were houses booby-trapped? Is there any clarity you can offer?
Well, Michael, thank you for having me today. And I'll tell you, the death of innocent civilians in war is a terrible tragedy, no matter how many, and it weighs heavily on our hearts. And that's why we're doing an assessment right now to determine the validity of the allegation and to find out the answers to your questions. For sure, we really can't say for sure right now.
How does the U.S. investigate when it's not there on the ground? It's pretty difficult, I would imagine. Iraqi forces are there, but one presumes U.S. investigators are not.
That's correct. The coalition takes all allegations, and a lot of times we don't have specific locations. We get a lot of these allegations directly from social media, and they're not very specific. Once we determine we have enough facts to conduct an investigation, we'll look at lots of different types of evidence, such as strike videos, witness accounts, even social media input, and any other evidence that is presented to us to determine if the allegation is credible. And like you said, we don't have people on the ground. In this case, the area was just recently liberated from ISIS, so the Iraqis have just gotten some people there. So we'll take any evidence that they are able to present to us as well.
It's such a difficult environment. One of the Iraqi vice presidents, Osama al-Nujafi, he's from Mosul, and he actually said the other day that there, in his words, has been a change in the rules of engagement that, again, his words, he said it has cost hundreds of civilian lives. Has there been any change? Is there any broader discretion to commanders on the ground?
No, Michael, there's been no changes to the rules of engagement. There's been no additional authorities given to commanders here in Iraq or Syria. I'll tell you what's interesting is that we keep looking at, whenever we have one of these allegations of civilian casualties, we're going to take it seriously and we're going to look at it. But the real question is what is ISIS doing to contribute to this? ISIS is the one that is using humans as shields every single day. ISIS is fighting from people's homes. ISIS is using schools and mosques and hospitals as weapon storage facilities and fighting positions for their terrorist acts. They are the cause of the civilian casualties.
I'm curious, though, when it comes to the protocol for calling in an airstrike, particularly in a close, tight, urban combat environment, even if the target is a suicide vehicle, obviously a major threat to forces on the ground, is the word of Iraqi forces enough for the U.S. to strike, or does the U.S. need to have eyes on the target, its own evaluation before engaging?
Michael, all coalition airstrikes are approved by both a Iraqi officer as well as a coalition officer. Both officers have to agree before the strike takes place. And in many of these cases, we have to ensure, of course, that the strike is proportional. We don't want to use ammunition that is oversized to the target. If we're trying to take out some ISIS snipers, perhaps on a roof, we're not going to use a large bomb that's going to destroy a building. We're going to make sure that we use a proportional munition that will kill the fighters, but leave the building standing. We want to return Mosul to the people of Mosul, in one piece.
One of the problems is that the Iraqi government has more than once encouraged civilians in Mosul to stay put, to not leave their homes, and then, you see the civilian casualties start to mount. I mean, that's problematic in and of itself, isn't it, if they have to stay?
We fully support the Iraqi government's decision in that matter. And in fact, you saw this on the west side of Mosul recently, where civilians trying to flee the fighting were actually targeted by ISIS, shot in the back by snipers when they were trying to get out of the city. So there's no sure bet for civilians anywhere. Yes, they're in harm's way right now, but we are trying to protect them. We will never target civilians, but we can't say that for our enemy, because we've seen that recently where the civilians trying to leave were killed by the Iraqis. You just have to take a look at how many mass graves are surrounding Mosul right now, with what, thousands of dead civilians in them. I think the civilians should probably take their chances in the city and know that we're going to do everything that we can, and the Iraqi security forces are going to do everything that they can to protect them, and they take their chances with the enemy.
Colonel, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about reports, other reports that I'm sure you're familiar with, that dozens of people were killed when an airstrike hit a school near Raqqa. Of course, Raqqa, the next target. There are various reports blaming the US for that and saying the school actually had refugees in it that had fled fighting in Palmyra. I'm just wondering if any further information on that investigation or that ongoing?
Michael, I'm familiar with the report that that you're referring to, and that case is currently under an assessment right now. As I said before, ISIS is known to use schools, mosques, and hospitals as fighting positions or weapon storage positions. So, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case here, but we have not been able to determine yet the validity of that allegation.
All right. I appreciate your time, Colonel. A very difficult sort of battlefield and terrain there for all concerned, not to mention the civilians most of all. Colonel Joe Skoroka, thanks so much.
Thank you, Michael.